Sure. Go ahead.
First of all, John Humphrey Centre was not John Humphrey Centre. It was Human Rights Foundation, Canadian Human Rights Foundation, and their head office was in Montreal. And we set up their Western Canada office, myself and two others, Professor Gerald Gall and Mr. He was a former, Human Rights Commissioner,
Okay.
We worked so many years together, So basically, that was let me think about it, because that name is very important to me, See, first of all, I'm 83 and going to be 84 this year in August, just a few months later, So my memory sometimes doesn't catch us particularly for the names, Yeah, Mr. O'Neill.
Okay.
So Jack O'Neill, myself, and Professor Gerald Gall. We were the three directors of the Canadian Human Rights Foundation, Western Canada. I'm talking of in the mid-80s. And we used to go to Ottawa for the meetings. Then we arranged an international conference here to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That is United Nations Declaration for Human Rights. It was celebrated in 1998 in Edmonton. That was the largest celebration in the whole world for the UN Declaration. And that is the time when Archbishop Desmond Tutu came over here, Mary Robinson, who was United Nations head of the human rights, she came over here, and Chief Justice of Supreme Court, he came over. They were the three main judges, and we had a 3 days conference here, which was attended by about over 700 people, So this was one of the major events taking place in Edmonton. And subsequent to that, the John Humphrey Centre. John Humphrey was the founder of and the original author of the Universal Declaration for Human Rights, working with United Nations. And at that time, so we thought that we should set up a separate organization here, separate from the Montreal organization. But it was very difficult to communicate. Traveling was very expensive, communications were very expensive. So finally, we decided that we will have John Humphrey Centre for Peace and Human Rights. Basically, same objective as the Canadian Human Rights Commission, Human Rights Foundation in Montreal. So that is the beginning of John Humphrey Centre. That was after 1998. So, as regards the subsequent activities, of John Humphrey Centre, see this at that time, the Canada has gone through many changes. You know, originally it was the three founding nations. They call it two, but there are three. So the British, the French, and the natives. Who were here before even those two.
Mm-hmm.
Subsequently, after the World War, lot of people, immigrants came from other countries like Chinese, from Europe, from India, from Philippines. So really the issue was racism, multiculturalism, and subsequently what are the Canadian values, because they had to define themselves, what kind of Canada, what are the values, the people coming from all over the world with so many religions,
Mm-hmm.
so many cultures, so many languages, what is common between all of them? So it was decided that our vision will be Universal Declaration for Human Rights. So that is the vision of John Humphrey Centre for Peace and Human Rights. Second thing which was decided was that we will not be marching in the streets, We will try to promote these ideals through education.
Okay.
So we will investigate, we will research those issues, bring it to the people so that people can appreciate it. And it has always been that human rights issues, they are never, sort of short, it is always there. The differences in the communities,
Mm-hmm.
differences in the culture. So basically, they stood up for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And the projects subsequently, they have been coming, education, like women's issues, like native issues. Then basically came that even the water is a human rights issue. So that's the way, John Humphrey Centre developed.
Okay.
The idea is that the whole community, which consists of now more than 200 nationalities, there is no country in the world at this time which is like Canada. The second country may be Australia, and third might be United States. So, but Canada has been unique, We have 200 nationalities, hundreds of cultures, religions, languages, and every year it is changing, the mix of the population is changing, So most of the immigrants, when they come to this country, they bring their own past cultures, like Indians, Chinese, they have a culture of thousands of years. When they come, as soon as they land, that doesn't mean, that their mind is whitewashed, So they come here, but they are not aware of what are the Canadians they have developed, what kind of culture and values they have developed, So basically, the education, it meant, that we have to educate, share our values and culture, because it makes us rich,
Mm-hmm.
When we talk of culture, what we include is the language, your music,
Mm-hmm.
your writing abilities,
Mhm.
your food, your clothing, So there is always exchange taking place in the community between different people, different people coming from different parts of the world, you know.
Mhm. Do you feel like it's a sign of respect or disrespect to wear cultural attire if it is not of your culture or religion?
Pardon me?
Do you feel that it is acceptable or unacceptable to wear cultural clothing if it is not of your culture or
You know,
religion?
you know,
Like as appreciation sign?
it's this is one area, you know, where I have been very much involved, you know. You see, I was a member of the Canadian Human Rights Commission,
Mhm.
where it came that the RCMP,
Mhm.
you know, officer, could he had his braids, you know,
Mhm.
could they have women, you know, in the RC, you know, there were no women in RCMP.
Mhm.
Could we have the Sikh turbans, you know? See, if you go back and look to those countries,
Mhm.
they are managing both with those, you know, in India you see the policeman doing very good job
Yeah.
with the turban. So basically turban is not tied up with the your ability to do the job.
Mhm.
Similarly women, you know,
Mhm.
it's not because they are women, you know, it's not tied up. They perform much better than men in many areas, you know.
Mhm.
Similarly there. So this is basically a non-issue, you know.
Mhm.
The people have made issue because it's a lack of knowledge, you know,
Mhm.
lack of understanding, you know.
Mhm.
So basically, as they understand, as the communities mix, you know, say my neighbor is a from from China, one neighbor is from Ukraine, one neighbor is from Russia. So basically, they cook different food, they eat different food, they talk different languages, but when they come out, you know,
Mhm.
there are a lot of things common between them, you know.
Mhm.
So basically, well, when we say common, when it's a question of poverty, it doesn't matter, you know, what kind of person you are, you know, what nationality you belong,
Mhm.
medical issue, education issue. So basically, the people get around those values, you know,
Mhm.
what kind of government we want, whether we believe in democracy or we believe in a middle coming from China, you know, that we want a dictatorship like that, you know. So there is a difference.
Mhm.
So this is where John Humphrey Centre has played a very important role in promoting those values
Mhm.
through the United Nations, you know, Human Rights Declaration, that this is something common between all of us.
Mhm.
The turban is not common, the braid is not common, but at the same time, if you wear something else, you know, to this is for the vision for the whole country. Nobody, all the people, 200 nationalities, they are not going to be one religion. They are not going to be one culture. They'll be all different, you know.
Mhm.
So basically, the values which John Humphrey Centre promotes with the vision, United Nations Declaration for Human Rights, that's common between all of them.
Mhm.
Now the question comes, you know, fine, these are the values, you know.
Mhm.
We got people from 200 countries, nationalities. We got hundreds of languages, but if we sit down here, you know, this country is probably the youngest country, you know, 150 years old.
Mhm.
It will be in 2017, you know. So we are 147-year-old, you know, which is not a, when we compare it with India, China, European countries, you know, they have a history of thousands of years, you know.
Mhm.
But the people who are coming from those areas, you know, we share their cultures and everything, but we are developing a role model because if we look, you know, there are discrimination between the religions going on, Middle East wars are going on, there is a discrimination against women, gender equality, you look what happened in the Paris, you look, even that doesn't mean that we are the best people, we have Marc Le Pen in Montreal, who killed 14 girls, so we still have to develop some those common values, promote those values. But what is the kind of vision we have? The vision is to develop a civil society. A civil society which these values they share, everybody can share. It encourages you to develop your own language. We become rich, more languages, more cultures, look at more restaurants, different food. So it is the civil society. But again, the question comes, yes, civil society. The Greeks have been talking about civil society for 2000 years. What kind of civil society? Obama used the word civil society in his inaugural address, when he became president about 20 times, And some of the prime minister, Cameron, he used the word. Everybody uses the word civil society, but nobody has defined exactly what is a civil society. We as the, after sharing these values promoted by UN Declaration, we have come up with a definition of a civil society. That should be the vision of Canada. What is a civil society? It has got 5 pillars. 5 pillars of the civil society, which can be shared by every human being in Canada. Number 1, right and respect for every living human being. Number 2, literacy. The people, they don't have to be PhD, but they have enough knowledge to be able to read and write so that they can make their own decisions. Number 3, rule of law, justice, and non-violence. You cannot have a civil society with guns in everybody's pockets. Number 4, respect and knowledge of Universal Declaration for Human Rights. What are those values? Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada. What are those values which should be promoted among all Canadian citizens or non-citizens or immigrants, whosoever lives there? And number 5, all these 4 things are useless if there is no food in the belly, So we want a vibrant economy, sustainable economy, respect for environment, and equal opportunity. So these are the 5 pillars which we want to develop, common pillars. And that's what John Humphrey Centre stands for, Over a period of time, it may be 50 years, 100 years, but we want to become a role model for the rest of the world, that the people with different cultures, they can live together. The people with different religions, they can live together. Women, which is 50% of the population of the world, 49, 51, 50-50. Unless there is gender equality, we will never have peace in the world. We will never be a civil society. So that is why we started the Daughters' Day. That every woman, 1 day old or 100-year-old, they are daughters. So what does Daughters' Day stand for? Number 1, respect. Celebrate every woman. Number 2, no violence against women. Number 3, message to the women, look here. If there is a discrimination, stand up. Don't accept discrimination. education is a very important. So be part of these 5 pillars, promote these pillars, civil society, so that you can be equal partnership. So this has been going on in Edmonton. I'm very happy, that Edmonton is the sort of source of these ideas of equality, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the civil society. So that's the kind of country, that kind of message we want to give to the world. So that's what John Humphrey Centre does. Educate the people about the UN Declaration, human rights, equality, and the sustainable qualities we call the environment, what God has given us, clear water, clear air, and that's what we all share, doesn't matter, if the water is contaminated, it's not going to make a distinction whether you are a man or a woman, whether you are what kind of. So basically the idea is to move together, promote those values which makes humanity better, which our children and grandchildren. But how can we do that? That's a very important question. Everybody agrees, yes, fine. These governments, first of all, anybody in the government, they are run by political parties.
Mhm.
Now political parties, they have certainly objectives.
Yes, please, this
They
is
want to,
JHC
but at the
that
same
we are
time,
calling.
as soon as they come in the power,
Appointment for
they want to perpetuate their power.
Mhm.
So the main issue with them is how to stay in power. Then basically, some small issues, they look very short term, they don't look long term. And those political parties,
No, nothing.
we have the citizens
Usually I go to
to tell them,
but I live
that
close
look here,
to
if we
Century,
say education,
so I can,
education
go to
means
the Century. Does it make any
promoting
difference?
those values which will make a stronger civil
Just a
society.
second, January
Education is a
21st.
part of that,
Mhm.
all
Oh,
law and
Friday.
order is a part of that. but-
Okay, what time?
We don't need the guns,
10:40.
So basically, but the guns, the government says, no, we need the guns.
And also
So basically
some,
there is a
I have
conflict
to go for,
between the
blood work done, fasting.
development of a
after
civil
that.
society and the governments who want to
I have to
perpetuate their
tell them.
power, because they
No,
know
I
the
you
people,
do,
some people who have
but,
gone, they will give them
also
votes,
after phone,
To get the
something
votes,
like that.
they will do anything.
Oh, thank,
So
oh, actually,
education is a very
just second, I
important
have to
part
take
of
it
that.
down.
So the governments, we have to motivate. It should be citizens should be talking about. So John Humphrey Centre, where is
Is
the
it insurance? Where is it?
education with
Okay,
other, they work with the
702.
within the community
49120.
and promote those values: equality, justice, human rights,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and they're doing a wonderful job. Very proud of it, that I'm a part of the founding part of this organization.
Yeah. I usually go to Tower.
I would definitely be proud of that too.
Pardon me?
I would definitely be proud of that too.
Yeah, but the problem is that for the last 30 years we have, more than that, we've been in existence.
Mhm.
Okay.
The most difficult
Dr. Don Cosmo.
problem is funding for the organization.
Uh,
The governments are not dedicated to promoting human rights.
That's right. That's
They are
right.
not promoting to creating a civil society. For example, John Humphrey
Thank you
Centre
very
has
much.
done a wonderful job in preparing curriculum for the schools.
Mhm.
They are, some of them, they are still lying in the social studies. Some teachers in school, but this has not become a part of education.
Mhm.
So what is needed is resources. The, we need more people supporting these values, so that they can be in government, they know the values that we will have. See, for example, how do we create jihadis, we get people from all over the world, and very unfortunate that Calgary has been found to create 6 jihadis, who went and fought in Syria or Iraq, How do we create jihadis? They were born and raised here in Canada. So there is a reason for that. They never went to a school where Charter of Rights and Freedom was taught, where these values, universal values, human rights are taught. So what we need is promoting these values in the schools, in the community, so that those people who come from other countries, they have their values. You don't brainwash them as soon as they land in Canada. But we have a system that 3 years, if you want to become citizen of Canada, you have 3 years to learn about the values and you will be tested. They are tested, But the governments have given a little escape, to the seniors, that you don't know the English language or French language, so you are exempt from the language. You don't know about Canada, so you are exempt from the knowledge of Canada. Over 55, they don't have to know. And the people who are problem, they are the 55 people, who come with those ideas from older country, that women are not to be
My phone
equal.
number is 783.
Get the girl married at the age of 17, 18. Don't send her to school. Don't let her drive.
My name is Jack.
She should be married at the age of 18. No career,
Okay, I
So
like
basically,
to book appointment.
we have made
Get my
exemption,
blood work done.
which is
And
not
that
very
way,
helpful
so I
in
have to
promoting
keep
the
my
civil
9 hours
society.
fast.
We
And
do not have the
get
education in
blood work
schools,
done, so
but
I
we
thought
have,
I'll-
we are supporting separate religious institutions. What do the religious institutions teach? Religion is based on 1,000-year history, 2,000-year history.
Bhatia,
When there was no Supreme Court,
acts like
when there was no parliament,
A,
when there were no defined rights and democracy,
IA.
So we are comparing with the religion.
On 23rd,
1,000 years, 5,000 years
23rd.
history, that
and,
you can't ask any question.
That's what it's happening.
That's what we
Yeah.
are told, those 55 years over. They said, don't ask any question. Religion,
It's too late.
whatever was written, 1,000 years, 2,000, that's what it is. That women should never, they should be kept at home.
Sunday
They
the
should not
25th.
go for work.
Oh, well, I had-
We can't have civil society with that kind of attitude. So what we need
Seven.
is
So can I come
promotion of
about,
those values
7:30?
which John Humphrey Centre is promoting through
Can I
United
just-
Nations
Because sometimes I just come there and get it done in Vildas, okay? or do I have
Declaration
to
for
wait?
Human Rights.
Pardon?
We need Charter of Rights and Freedom of Canadian Charter of Rights to be promoted. We need in schools,
Otherwise, on the
every
25th at
student,
8:30.
it should be compulsory, from grade 1 to the John Humphrey Centre, which they prepared the curriculum for. They spent years, $100,000, to prepare those courses. They should be in schools and colleges and university everywhere. And the new citizens who come over 55, there should be nobody allowed to become Canadian citizen unless they know what are the Canadian values. Give them something, even in their own language. It's not necessary that they should learn equality in English only. They can learn in their own language. It's cheaper to promote that way. If they don't know English, fine. But at the same time, when they go to school, when they go to shopping center, they say cauliflower, they don't talk it. It's my own language, So they learn. They go to the bank, they learn. They go to the doctor, they learn. So with the result, many people who never knew English in 3 years, they are good in English. So, but this is what John Humphrey Centre does, and we want the governments to be supporting these values. We want the citizens to learn and push the governments to support this institution and many other institutions who promote some of these values. But the key thing is we want to develop a civil society in 100 years so that our children, grandchildren, they can all live in peace and love.
How do you think that we'll be able to promote that in the community in the future?
How do we make government first of all? We elect the people,
Yes.
If those people are well informed that this vision, if they share that look here, human rights is the right thing to do for every human being. With 200 nationalities, what is common? If they keep on fighting about their own religions, my religion is better than your religion, that we will never have peace. We will be doing it what is happening in Paris, what is happening in Europe, what is happening in Middle East, what is happening in Africa. The 200 girls taken from the African country by the extremists, and we don't know what have they done, So if we don't want those things to happen, we want peace, education. Education of what? How we make a civil society. Those 5 pillars, they should be taught in every school, every university. We have the $1 billion we spent research on tar sands.
This is G.T. Bhatia.
Is there in
How are
University
you?
of Alberta, do we have one department for human rights?
First I will pay the bill which you send me.
Do we have in
And
University of
then,
Calgary
I
one
like to
which will cost
talk to-
maybe $4 or $5 million?
Is like Dr.
What kind of
Bhatia
education is
I
there?
like to ask him or something.
The governments are giving you education only
Yeah, if he's there,
where you
I'm
can
not
find the
sure.
jobs. That's all.
Okay,
Not
thank
good
you.
human beings. That's, Russia, they had developed the scientists, Stalin era, they were the first people, to send the in the space, the man in the space. But they had a good scientist, though mathematician, engineers and everything. But where the country went, because there were no human rights. Stalin died and the country separated into so many, sub-countries or countries. So basically the things which will keep us together are these values, These values we have to teach in the schools, colleges, universities, where the ideas, that is, the ideas flourish there. So we don't have, we say, I'll make you a good engineer, but I'll make you a good maybe plumber, But at the same time, you want to become a good candidate for teaching human rights. No university does that, There was university courses, for Canadian, Canadian history, and that's gone. So we have to push these governments, and we have also to make sure that the people like you, they become governments. So that's the way. It is a slow process, but we know you put a seed in the ground, it takes 25 years to become a tree. So what John Humphrey Centre is doing is seeding. And I'm very hopeful that we will have a civil society in Canada. We will be the role model for the rest of the world, how people with different cultures, different religions, different, you know, sexes, they can live together.